Yeti. Welcome to the Phoenix music scene on the YetiRadio.com. The Yeti Radio, powered by DavidLeeImaging.com.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to YetiRadio.com, live on YouTube, Twitch, Live 365, and any of the other platforms listed on the YetiRadio.com. Thank you for joining us tonight. Tonight, live in studio, we're going to have Mr. Jeff Young, of formerly of Megadeath and Kings of Thrash, along with being the producer of Backstage, right here on the Yeti Radio. Stay tuned. Here's first song for you, In the Flesh. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jeff Young. Welcome, sir.
Hola. I don't know where to look or where the people are. Peace. Peace, fellow human beings.
Well, thank you for joining me. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you here. Because you've been on other featured outlets like Billboard, Rolling Stone, Jazz Is, Recording Academy, and The Ultimate Classic Rock.
Wow. I didn't even know all that.
Well, I had a cheat sheet. You also performed major television shows such as Farm Aid 2000 on CMT. You hosted MTV's Headbangers Ball and performed the Vegas version of the Broadway musical Rock of Ages.
Guilty.
How was that?
That was amazing.
It sounds like it would be.
That came through my buddy Joe Hoekstra, who's I think they're just starting out with the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, their yearly Christmas metal excursion. We were doing the Randy Rhoads Remembered tour out on the East Coast, and one night we were talking on the tour bus after the show, and somehow I mentioned that I was living in Vegas. He said, "Oh, I thought you were in L.A. You're in Vegas?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, the cat who's doing the Guitar One Roll and Rock of Ages in Las Vegas, which is what Joel was doing on Broadway, he needs a sub," and the rest was history. I was happy to sub that show, and it's amazing doing a show like that where you can go into the same venue every day and you have the same choreography. It's the same cast. You're not traveling around. It was always at the Venetian, if people know that casino.
Yes.
Resort on the Strip. So it was a wonderful experience. I'd love to do something like that again.
Yeah, definitely a whole lot of less variables as opposed to being on the road.
True that.
But yes, the excitement of being in Vegas and having a steady show, had to be a blast, because it's just almost like a 9 to 5 at that point. Except it's not 9 to 5.
Except it's only a few hours a day. I mean, you get there early
Right.
to the venue, and the show's a couple hours. The neat thing is the band was on stage the whole time. I was actually like the first thing on stage, doing Steve Vai's intro solo to Just Like Paradise.
Oh,
And
wow.
the last thing on the stage, jumping off a bar and coaxing the audience to go crazy before the lights go down.
Well, I know you've got me by a few years. So what actually got you started in music?
I started playing viola in first grade when they came around with all the orchestral instruments. But then I got jealous of that cello across the classroom. Tried to talk my mom into letting me change to cello, which she was not having any part of. I think she was intuitive enough to know that I was this tall and the cello was that tall, and she'd be the one having to help me cart that thing all over town. So I got frustrated, gave up the viola, but a few years later when they came around with the band instruments, I did play tenor sax from 3rd to 9th grade. Actually, I played baritone in 9th grade, but that was a great foundation where you have a conductor in front of the class and teaching you how to read music and play in time, play with other people. And in this case, you're playing with 40, 50 people as opposed to just 4 or 5 in a band. So from a young age, I think that really helped me get a good musical foundation where, later in life, then you don't have to think about it because it's more like breathing because you've been doing it it's like children. If you in Europe, these kids who can speak 3 or 4 languages, like it's nothing, because when you're so young, you learn like a sponge.
Okay. Awesome. Does any of that have anything to do with Miss Tina? I don't want to mispronounce her last name.
Guo?
Yes. Did she played...
She played cello, electric, and acoustic. She plays acoustic cello. I was about to do it like this with the mic, but she plays acoustic cello, traditional, but she also has an electric cello that she puts through a big guitar stack, like a big giant amp.
Wow. And
uses distortion. And that's on my first single from what's going to be my next solo album that's coming out next year. That song's called Monsoon. And that's true that I was able to get my yayas out, so to speak, or live vicariously through Tina, since I was denied on the cello as a child. All these years later, when I did that song, it has a lot of gypsy influence in the song, and so it lent itself to either like a violin, viola, or a cello. And she's an amazing musician. She's actually out touring with Hans Zimmer.
Yes.
And she's played in most of the Hollywood motion pictures, the cello parts for recent years. I know she's in a lot of the video games where you're hearing cello. It's probably her.
Okay. I see where she was also with Cirque du Soleil and the Michael Jackson
Immortal.
The Immortal Tour, yes.
And I saw some video from a Joe Bonamassa live DVD at the Royal Hall in the UK, and she's jamming out with him. So she gets around.
Definitely.
Musically speaking.
Yes, definitely musically speaking. So you finished school. You finished music school in, I want to say it was 85. 83 was stuck in my head for some reason.
Yeah. And when it was a young 1 year. I was about to say it was a young year. It was a 1 year vocational school, Musicians Institute, Guitar Institute of Technology is what you're talking about. A lot of great players, musicians have come out of there, from Paul Gilbert to Jeff Buckley, no less, and a lot of great teachers at the time when I attended, from Tommy Tedesco, of Wrecking Crew fame. Frank Gambale was one of my favorite teachers, Scott Henderson. Just, it was a really great 1 year, because I thought about doing kind of like what Randy wanted to do if he would have left Ozzy and go do a 4-year classical guitar program, but I didn't want to study social studies or algebra or stuff that I knew I wasn't going to need. And GIT let you do for 7 periods a day. You're doing music theory, ear training, jazz, blues, metal, all these different classes, plus you have private teachers and you're around other musicians. And most of all, it put me in Hollywood right there in the late 80s, when it was still the heyday and the place to be.
Definitely the place to be. Oh, I can only imagine what that was like. Maybe not even imagine.
It was a whole scene, my man.
I'm sure. And then, 2 years later, you get...
it was 4 years.
Was it 4?
4 years. I was teaching guitar and playing around, and I had a band that was close to a deal. And just getting a group of 4 or 5 guys that can get along and play together and all have the same directions, a real trick to manifest. And the bands who've done it and kept it together really are to be commended. But our band had broke up, and I was teaching guitar lessons, and actually I was thinking about leaving LA to go to Austin or New York or Europe, or I didn't know where I was going to go. But as fate would have it, an opportunity through a former guitar student, Jay Reynolds, who was a buddy of mine who lived in a house I lived in West Hollywood. I don't think I ever even charged him for lessons. He lived downstairs, and sometimes I'd just show him a few things. Actually, a few of my rhythm riffs ended up on that Malice album, License to Kill. I never got any commission for that. I'd show him these rhythms, and then the album would come out, and I go, dude, that's my guitar part. And I got him on, demos that I've recorded. But, see how karma works? He stole a couple of my rhythms. You see what happens? I got that gig.
Right. Comes
All's
back around.
right with the world. Then.
Absolutely. There's balance in everything.
Mm-hmm.
One way or another. Definitely, for sure.
Yeah.
And then, was it 88? With Megadeath, and
it was a whirlwind year and change. I don't know how long I stayed in the tornado of souls, but it was a blast, and I made the most of it.
Okay. Did they find you to audition, or
no? I was teaching. They had hired Jay Reynolds, was their guitarist.
Okay.
And I was his teacher, and I was there in the studio, and it was the Music Grinder on Melrose that's no longer. It's now a Mexican restaurant, unfortunately, but that's where Alan Holsworth did Road Games, which was the album Eddie Van Halen helped him do for Warner Brothers. It was his big mainstream jazz rock fusion album. So I was just stoked to be, I'm like, the Music Grinder where Holsworth did Road Games. What's going on here? And so literally I was teaching the guy lessons, and like Chuck Bueller would run through the room and see me playing. I think the first thing I tried to write was Hook and Mouth, that solo. And it's kind of repetitive in that it's the same every time, but I guess I was engineering him out of a gig because it's really fast and really complicated, like Flight of the Bumblebee. It's so super fast, and I think it was a little out of his dexterity, and so they saw me playing it, him kind of struggling, and one thing led to another, and
okay,
the guitar teacher got the gig.
I guess sometimes that happens because I'll teach you everything you know, but I'm not going to teach you everything I know.
Yeah.
Classic lesson for our children. So in 1998, you crossed over to World Fusion and co-wrote and produced
and played
Chameleon,
on a little bit.
Played on Chameleon for Batty Ass.
I mean, that's the best thing. Someone called her show when she played up in, I think, Seattle or Portland, and we're looking for tickets for the Body Acid show. No one knows how to pronounce the name, it's Baji Asagi.
Oh,
was the name. But how could you read that? Even when I first discovered I thought her name was Badi Assad, like was the way I read it, but it's Baji Asagi. And I met her quite by accident, where the Megadeath came through a guitar student that came through a guitar maker, a guitar luthier, and I had taken a few years off from guitar playing. I was back in Ohio working in our family business, a long story that I'll spare you. But I got the itch to play guitar again, and I was really into flamenco. I always have been. A lot of the solos on the Megadeth album are just me trying to imitate a flamenco guitar player, like Set the World Afire, Mary Jane, two examples that come to mind. So then I was starting to get into Brazilian, because there's kind of a crossover between Brazilian and flamenco, and that their folk music is based around a nylon string instrument, a nylon string guitar. And I was just trying to do an album of my own, and I read an article in Acoustic Guitar Magazine. They were doing a series with different guitar makers. And this month was a guitar maker from New York City named Thomas Humphrey. And he was responsible for really the first revolution in the design of the classical guitar in probably 100 years prior. And he elevated, you could Google it if you want to see, it's the Thomas Humphrey Millennium is the model. And he elevated the fretboard, because if you think of how a classical or an acoustic guitar is, where there's not a lot of room to get up unless they make it a cutaway, so you can't play. But he figured out how to elevate the neck, so without making a cutaway you could still access the higher frets. Plus he braced it better inside for more projection in a recital hall or a beautiful theater where a lot of these classical guitar instruments are played. So just reading that article, his philosophy made so much sense to me that sight unseen I had to have this guitar. And luckily, right within the column there was an ad for D'Addario Strings, and they were using different luthiers, and he was in the ad. Like, imagine a magazine with a Polaroid on the page, and there he is in his workshop holding up his guitar saying, I put D'Addario Strings on all my guitars that go out of the shop. And I tacked that up on my wall, His business card was also on that ad, and I put a magnifying glass, and I literally called him, because I don't even think there was no internet at the time when this happened. So I used the magnifying glass, called him, told him who I was, and said, I gotta have your guitar. He said, the bad news is it's $7,000. and a year-long wait, but I overcame both those, and we buddied up, and it was through this guitar maker who, Baji, the younger sister of Sergio No Daiosaji, who are the greatest classical guitar duo in history. They studied with Segovia's protege, and when Yo-Yo Ma did his Brazil cello album, he could have got anyone to arrange it, and he went and got Sergio. And so through this guitar maker, I was introduced to this family, and I ended up flying to New York and meeting them, and Baji and I hit it off, and I helped her co-write because she'd never really written original songs. She had done interpretations of other people's music and a lot of Brazilian, great Brazilian folk music or traditional Brazilian music, and she kind of had a fear of composing. So I helped her do that, and we got a deal with Verve, the legendary jazz label, Polygram, and we had a #1 album, toured all over the world, toured with Joe Cocker and Cassandra Wilson in Europe, and Caetano Veloso, who our American friends might not know, but he's like the David Byrne, one of the grandfathers of Brazilian music. Actually, David Byrne from Talking Heads, all his moves, I never realized all those peculiar moves that David Byrne does in Talking Heads, he took from Caetano. When we opened, I said, look at his movements on stage, because David Byrne, Talking Heads guy, is a huge world music freak. He has his own label, Luakabov Records, under the Warner Brother umbrella. So just playing with so many different exotic, coming from the metal world, which is more familiar to the Western listener, and then meeting all these different people from different cultures, which happens when you're doing world music. You meet people from every country, and when you're playing on these festivals. So it was really both, I think, life enriching, but a musically enriching experience that now I can bring back into whatever music I do. And maybe that's why my originals sound different, or there's definitely a world music influence in a lot of them.
Definitely, and it is amazing. I've been listening to it for like 3 or 4 weeks, just trying to wrap my head around it, because I enjoy instrumentals personally.
Yeah, it's a really cool format that leaves the listener open for a lot of, they can put the song on and shut their eyes and go wherever they want to go. And if you do it right, I think what I tried to do with the original instrumentals that I'm writing is I think back to the 70s and even the 60s, when they had a lot of great instrumentals on radio, even on AM radio. And if you think of like Frankenstein by Edgar Winter and maybe some of the Santana instrumental stuff, the instrumentalist really had a knack for playing vocally, where they made, whether it was Edgar Winter with the keyboard or Santana with the guitar, they really made it a vocal experience which the listener could sing back, as opposed to, I think in the 80s people got a little shreddy and like so many notes that it's hard for the average listener to sing it back or to walk away from a show remembering. So I've really tried to merge the two. I want to have enough, playing and chops that my guitar playing friends and listeners will appreciate it, but so that it speaks to anyone, whether they are like a guitar nerd or not. Just you want to do instrumentals that speak to everyone, that are universal. So I think that's the art about it.
Definitely. That's it's just listening to it. It's just, you see how broad that it is.
And you can take the listener on a journey, and then with those songs, we're talking about Monsoon and In the Flesh and Slow Burn that are on my Bandcamp. Those are the first 3 songs from my new album, which is going to be a mix of vocal and instrumental, maybe like 60-40. But I surrounded myself with some of the best musicians on the planet, with Rick Fierabacci, the bassist, who's renowned. He replaced John Patitucci and Chick Corea, So that's a pretty good accommodation right there. Blood, Sweat, and Tears, I know he's touring with right now. Shakira he's played with. Sir Tom Jones, if you Google his discography, it's pretty impressive. Billy Cobham, which for me, when I found out he played with Billy Cobham, I instantly think of Tommy Bolin, who's one of my favorite 70s eras guitar player who played on Billy Cobham's solo albums. So I feel like it's like the 6 degrees of separation here. So I've used him on a bunch of tracks that some are released and some still to come.
Right.
And Brian Tichy on drums, on Monsoon, Jeff Tatora from Blue Man Group in Las Vegas, great buddy of mine, amazing drummer, and Jeff Bowders. With all the talk of Joe Satriani in the news this week, Jeff is the guy that often does Joe's guitar workshop summer camps that Joe does. Jeff will be his drummer, and he also played on a few of Paul Gilbert's albums.
Wow.
Just a phenomenal drummer. So when you get these players in the studio, and the thing about Monsoon and Tina Guo, and of course on Slow Burn I have Shania Twain's, and I just shared a video on my social media today. She just played on CMT. Her name's Andrea Witt, and she just did a tribute on CMT to Tanya Tucker. And she's out. She was touring with Shania Twain, and I met her through one of my students at GIT. And this is how that gig paid off. Like, your students end up getting in bands, and I noticed he got in this band, and her main instrument is viola. If we flash back to my instrument. And so I've been talking to her for years about playing viola on a track, which would be kind of like the next logical thing after Monsoon with the cello and what Tina did. But I had this song Slow Burn, and I just kept hearing pedal steel, and she had the gig doing the fiddle with Shania Twain, and she just picked up pedal steel on the fly. And she's a virtuoso at it. I mean, she's amazing. She puts distortion and echo and like guitar effects on it, and she's amazing at it. As you hear, I think you're going to play Slow Burn. So I seduced her into playing. I said, well, wait on the viola for a future track, but I got to have you on the pedal steel. And I got James Lomenzo on bass on that, current Megadeth bass player, so that's kind of noteworthy. And Jeff playing drums on that. So these musicians, and the interesting thing about these 3 tunes, they're all unrehearsed. Like literally these musicians came in the studio the day of. I show, you're standing here and Rick's standing there with his bass. I show it goes like this and that, and he's watching me, and Shane's behind the drums, and then we just track it. And In the Flesh was a first take. And that's pretty cool. Slow Burn was their first take. In the Flesh was with Jeff on drums. But you have these musicians that are so good that they can come in and they can sound like they've been rehearsing with you for a year. And you've been touring and you've really thought this song out, but all the bass lines and the drum licks you're hearing are coming off the top of these people's heads. You know, where I had it, I compose it, so I've thought out the parts. Some of my leads and stuff are improvised, but you really got to hand it to these, A++ level musicians who can just come in and just throw down like that. It's an incredible thing to be a part of and feel, in the studio when it's going down. You listen back to it and you're like, whoa, did we just do that?
Right. I can only imagine one take, and that's just the vibe, and everybody's on point.
Let me add one take to 2-inch analog tape, which for our younger listeners who grew up in a Pro Tools digital world, I have this really deep seated belief, I guess it's a spiritual musical belief that we're analog creatures, like human, we're analog beings, and that we're not meant to input digital information and all the frequencies and Wi-Fi and EMF and everything that's floating around in the atmosphere, maybe not the most healthy for our psyche and our beings. So one thing we can do, and we know music is medicine, right? I mean, Bob Marley taught us that, so it's a little more expensive. It's a lot more expensive. The tape's like $475 just for a roll of tape that you can fit 3 tunes on. So if you do 3 takes, that's why you want to do 1 take. Because if you take 2 or 3 takes to get a song, you're burning tape.
Right.
And you don't want to go over it and erase over it. But I've been recording everything, and I got a stack of 2-inch tapes, stuff that's going to be coming out over the next couple years that I've been working on since 2010. Slowly, like Slow Burn, I remember I did the basic tracks for that back in 2011, and it's taken this long to finish because sometimes you have to rate for the right pedal steel player.
Right.
I was trying to put vocals on it, and I had to realize it's not a vocal song, and vocalists are too hard to work with. So I said, I'm going to make it instrumental, but all these little beautiful parts of the process that maybe make the song take longer than you might expect also allow you to meet the right musicians. Like I didn't know Rick Farabaci back when I wrote Slow Burn back in 1994. I believe I wrote that song. So it took that many years. Sometimes you write a song and you'll finish it. I think In the Flesh I wrote and was done with within a year, or maybe 2 years. But I think the best songs, Segovia had a saying that it takes, years to master a song. And I think to write a really good song, you got to let it percolate for a while. And while I've been letting this music percolate, the musicians that are supposed to play on the songs just kind of like enter the arena, or they come on the stage and they do their thing, and it's a beautiful thing to watch. You just gotta, the main thing is you gotta be patient.
They show up in the aura, and the 2 auras meet, and it just blossoms. Yeah. It's I'm definitely a sight that anybody would want to see, I think, but and I totally get it, because of the simple fact that it's like fine wine, aged to perfection. Some songs going to take longer. Ingredients,
like, so if you're making the best record, but the delivery system is digital, and it's not touching people in their soul and their spirit, maybe that's why music doesn't seem to connect today the way it did with people back in the day. And maybe it's because of the internet. Maybe it's because there's too many other distractions.
That wall.
Yeah.
I've had.
But maybe it's because of the delivery mechanism. And let the people who are listening, when you get the music, when you start hearing it, see if you feel a difference when you listen to it because of how it was recorded. I mean, it's going to be for everyone who takes it in, just like when trials on a new medication, you get to see the side effects. Hopefully the analog side effects will be all positive.
Yes, definitely. And that's like a couple stations I was with in the past, internet stations. I had people that come to my show just because I played vinyl.
Same thing. And you can hear same thing. And you can just kind of get a little... I need a sponsorship here. And you can hear and feel the difference. And it's, a lot of guys in the recording game say, you can't tell the difference. You can't hear the difference. Maybe you can hear the difference. I can hear the difference. And maybe someone can feel the difference. Maybe it's something that's unseen. Maybe it's something that's on the subliminal level, that's like unconscious, that we can't quantify, talk about, sit on a shelf, put a sticker on, a parental advisory sticker on it.
Right. I got to agree with you. It's totally got to be audible and feeling. It's just, there's no 2 ways about it, personally.
So that's my thing. I haven't put out as many records as maybe some other of my peers, but I've tried to make everyone count. Like I did the Megadeath in my 20s. In my 30s, I did the Brazilian thing. I put out Equilibrium. It's kind of a world fusion solo album. And Here I Come. Here I come again. Here I come
Here he
again,
is.
people.
So, wow, 40, 50, 55 years. Where's your favorite place to play? Your favorite venue?
Oh man, the one I'm playing next. There's so many beautiful places to play in the world, and a lot of these beautiful theaters I played with Baji over Europe that were built hundreds of years ago. The acoustics, it's amazing, because sometimes we would play with a drummer, but sometimes the shows would just be one acoustic guitar, or Baji and myself, 2 acoustic guitars. And when you're in a theater like that, it's beautiful. I remember Italy, beautiful theaters, Spain, Amsterdam, Holland. We did this one festival that was really cool called it used to be called the North Sea Festival. The North Sea Jazz Festival, and they've shortened it to the North Sea Festival because it's not just jazz. Even the year we were there, we imagine you're in Amsterdam and it's right outside in The Hague. Imagine a giant mall or a convention center of venues from 50 to 100 to 200 to 500 to 1,000 to a 30,000 seat, every size venue, and everyone from Europe descends on The Hague, and all weekend you get a schedule of bands. There's bands playing every hour on the hour in all these different venues in this mall of venues. In one weekend, not only did we play, and they put us in a venue too small. I mean, there were people like down the hall like sardines fighting to get in. I think we were in like a 2,000. I got to see Diana Krall, George Benson.
Wow.
Scott Henderson, Earth, Wind, and Fire. Discovered some amazing bands from Europe that we would have never discovered. This band Dau that was on Sony Classical. Really cool band with like an accordion. I think they had a cellist, accordion, a viola or a violinist, and a girl that would come out and sing on a few tunes. And you just stumble in a room and you're like, wow, this band is amazing, right? And that's kind of what led to me doing a radio show, Music Without Boundaries, because I was traveling all over collecting all this amazing outside the box music that, your average person who has to work a 9 to 5 and shops at the local record store or at Walmart's never going to hear these bands and these amazing musicians that aren't propped up by the corporate music demonic entertainment industry, right? So I discovered so many other bands just by playing in these different cities. But I got to tell you, as far as places like where would you move? Spain, like the south of Spain, where you've got Granada, Cordoba, Andalusia. That's that whole region where flamenco originated, because the gypsies migrated over the Romani Pass from India, and they migrated all over Europe, and so you have different styles of gypsy music, which is really one of my favorite. I could go on about gypsy music for as long as we've been talking already. That's why Monsoon is very gypsy, and there's always a little gypsy in what I do. But the gypsies who settled in the south, the southern region of Andalusia, that's where flamenco originated. And coincidentally enough, because I do cycling, kind of like road cycling, like that's where a lot of the Tour de France cyclists train before the Tour de France, because it's so hilly. And it's just right there. And actually, part of the Tour de France, they do go into Spain for just a little bit before they go back into France. So, but in America, I don't want to leave America out. In Brazil, some amazing places to play in Brazil. Japan. I remember with Megadeath, the thing that's memorable about playing in Japan is that they seem to care so much more about everything. Like, we had no programs for Megadeath in America. We're from America. We got no programs. You go to Japan, we had programs this big. color and black and white pictures. We're like, what? Like, and the sound team were like rocket scientists. They were just so on point, so polite, very different because the concerts start at 6 p.m. Everyone stays seated. There's no mosh pits in Japan. And at the end of the song, like, they're loud, they're going crazy. The second you stop, they're silent because they want to hear every word you say. A pin could drop. And they give lots of gifts. We got a lot of gifts over there. And super creative. Like, I mean, a girl handed me, I present you with this gift, and it's a drawing of me in pencil. This young girl that's just like, how does someone draw that beautifully at such a young age and take the time for me that this person did this for me?
Right.
And just very beautiful people in Japan. So, and Australia, New Zealand was unforgettable. And I went there with Bajid, Australia, and New Zealand. I knew I was going to love Australia, but nothing can prepare you for the landscapes of New Zealand. That's why they film all these movies like Lord of the Rings and these really picturesque. It's otherworldly. And met some amazing people there. And we just went back to Australia with Kings of Thrash, of course, and had some beautiful shows down there. Melbourne, I think, was the best show of our career for Kings. So,
well, if you ever go back that way and you need a roadie, let me know.
Yeah,
I'll jump on the bus.
Yeah, it's fun seeing all these places, and I look forward to next year seeing a whole lot more. I know that Kings of Thrash already has some plans to go to Europe for some cruises later in the year. So let's see where we end up. Where's Waldo next year?
Right, absolutely. So, you got any pre-show rituals? Anything off the wall?
Well, to most people, maybe yoga's off the wall. I do a lot of. It's really important to stretch. As a guitar player, like, we're sitting like this, and you're into a guitar, and you're kind of hunched over, and even on stage, maybe leaning into it. So it's really important to stretch. So I do a lot of yoga. I try not to eat too much or play too much the day of a show. You want to play a little, but you don't want to burn your hands out. So just that, and not talking to too many people before the show. Because even positive experiences, like we have every person, your children, your girlfriend, your friends, your band, your workmates, your schoolmates, your sports compadres, when you give people attention, you're giving your energy. And it, like right now, I can feel I don't talk a lot during the week. I'm usually quiet and playing guitar, and I don't speak a lot, so I can feel it's taking energy. And before you want to play, you want to be as relaxed and fresh and rested. So I try to just save my energy, not talk a lot during the day, and not maybe work out, but for sure yoga. I notice every time I stretch out, I play better that night.
Awesome. What's the strangest thing that's ever happened to you, other than at the Blues?
You mean as a part of the whole music industry?
Anything.
The strangest thing that's ever happened to me.
Strangest thing that's ever happened while you were on stage. I know Tom Jones, all the women threw their underwear at him, and somebody had their guitar.
I was just telling the story the other night because of the way that venue with the second floor and the stage. We played a venue in Canada with Megadeath where the second floor went all the way to the stage so people could sit. Like there was people seated right up to the wall. I remember Anarchy, we'd always finish the show with Anarchy, and we went to take a bow, and I just heard a giant thud. And I looked over, and a dude was just laying flat on the stage, kind of like Wile E. Coyote, like draw the chalk circle around the guy.
Body line.
He laid there for a few seconds, and then he stood up, and dove into the audience. So stuff like that happens, but the strangest things that happen, unfortunately, are some. Lately, like on the Kings of Thrash, the first shows that we did that led up to the the DVD and our signing with Cleopatra Records at the Whiskey, I unfortunately had a guitar tech that I inherited from another band that's pretty popular right now that I'll leave nameless. We had 3 shows. We started in San Diego, and that show went amazing at Brick by Brick. It was killer for a first show. Then we went to Arizona, and we played here. And that night, my tech there was one cable. I said at the beginning of the tour, whatever you do, guard this cable with your life. Carry it like it's nitroglycerin. We can't get this at Guitar Center. This is an irreplaceable cable. He almost lost it that night. Then the next night in Vegas, I have the blue dime bag Lightning Bolt Cowboys from Hell ML. It's my favorite guitar. It sounds amazing. It's just on country, blues, jazz. It's an amazing sounding guitar that a lot of guitarists have used that body shape, from the Cars to Sammy Hagar to Hart to Doobie Brothers. But I have that guitar, and it's a different shape than like a Strat, so you need different straps. And I looked down to get my guitar that I use for Killing Is My Business, which was the red Strat, and there's no strap on it. And this night, the guitar tech's on Elfson's side of the stage, way over there, and just looking at me. And I had no strap that would work on this guitar, so on stage in front of the whole audience, I'm having to I pulled the strap off the blue ML and put it on this. Now it's a totally wrong height, and I'm having to push it through the hole in the strap that's never been used, the high one. For guitar players, when you get a new strap, the holes are really tight and small, and you got to work it in. So I was up there in front of the audience for what seemed like 2 hours trying to get this strap on this guitar. And then, so I didn't lose my S at the tech that night. I just reminded him he couldn't. The next night we're filming a DVD, and it's at the Whiskey, and it ended up being the most sold out show the Whiskey had in a decade, complete with mosh pit and stage diving, which the Whiskey does not allow. But they did for that night, and they will again December 14th, people. We'll see you there. But so I told him even 1 hour before the show, dude, make sure that strap is on my red guitar, because I do last rites, and I do this really delicate tapping thing where I'm playing on the top strings, tapping here, and then tapping here like a piano would play the bass notes. It's not like how Eddie Van Halen taps. You're tapping on 2 different strings. You're hammering on the low strings and tapping on the high strings. It's a whole scene. And that's the first thing I have to do. It's very quiet. It's just me with an intro tape, the Last Rites tape that my buddy did all the orchestration. What do you think happened when I looked down at the Whiskey to pick up my guitar?
Oh, no.
There ain't no strap on my guitar, man. After the show, I was like, dude, what the hell? Did Mustaine pay you off, bro, or what, man? That Whiskey show, I mean, it looks cool, but I was on fire. That's why there's no Last Rites, Love to Death on the DVD, because it was a debacle because there was no strap on my guitar, and it was a whole scene. So that's maybe not a good memory, but that's a recent memory, and that won't happen this year. That won't be happening this time at the Whiskey. Got a new tech. I got Jeff Beck's guitar tech. I'm not messing around no more.
I can't blame you after that. That's wow.
But those are the things the audience doesn't realize, sometimes. That the weird little things that they don't know that are going on stage, and that the artist we're not always just up there going, "Hey guys, happy to see you here. Happy to be up here tonight."
So, outside of people that you've already collaborated with over the years, is there anybody?
Sade.
Okay. Never mind. I won't finish the question.
That'd be my dream gig if I could be her guitar player, because her band is badass, and it's just a great show. But there's so many amazing musicians that I'd love to play with, and luckily I'm finding my way to a lot of them. I had it's funny when you have dreams to work with a musician for years and then suddenly you're working with that person. And I got a few people right now like that I'm working with, and you guys are going to be hearing some really cool music next year. I'm just really stoked with the line of songs. I've got like three, four different projects, and they're all super cool and different.
So, speaking of the future and different projects, care to elaborate?
Well, Kings of Thrash is going to keep going and playing and doing, Megadeath and deep cuts, and then we're doing other stuff. We do the Swords and Tequila Riot and Jump in the Fire Metallica, and we'll throw some other stuff in there, I'm sure. I've been working on this album that's, as I mentioned, is going to be part instrumental, part vocal, and I got a single coming out for summer. This is one I'll talk about because Joe Hoekstra has already guested a lead guitar solo on it. And I discovered this singer from Ohio. He's 6'6". He just looks like a star. He's a white guy, but he's got that Lenny Kravitz, just kind of cool swagger. He's got a bit of Motown, a bit of Skynyrd, Molly Hatchet, that growl that the Molly Hatchet singer had, but he's even something else. This guy, a little Stone Temple Pilots. This guy is just super cool, and he writes amazing melodies.
Wow.
And so I got this song Wave Rider coming out with him. It's kind of if you can imagine, kind of a Florida, like Skynyrd Black Crowes meets West Coast Van Halen Rat kind of thing mashed up.
Wow.
With a little Motown in there. It's really different. It's super cool and danceable and summery. It's like that song you want to play at your tailgate party, or, it's a real, I think it's something the biker culture and the surfing culture is really going to embrace this tune, because it's one of those tunes, man. You want to put it in and drive, or get on your surfboard, or if you're at the beach with your lady, you're going to put this song in the Ghetto Blaster. I still call it that, even though we don't have Ghetto Blasters. So I'm excited about that. I got a really heavy tune I'm working on called In Chains that I started writing. Actually, I was living in Texas, and one of my buddies is Joey Gonzalez, who's the drummer for Phil Anselmo and the Illegals. You might hear him out on the road now with Pantera. So I started writing this song, so it's kind of got that kind of vibe. He's not playing drums on it. I got another 6'6" dude from Brazil, Carlos from Chris Poland's band, Ohm.
Okay, Ohm.
He replaced Nick Menza in Ohm.
Wow.
He did the drums on it. It's amazing. It's really heavy. And wait till you hear who's singing on that. And then I got some other stuff. We got this singer in Texas that's incredible. He's a little more like Phil meets Shinedown meets... God, this guy's got an incredible voice too. So I've never had a great male singer who could really, just like a star, could write, was cool, didn't have a bunch of drug problems, could sing on stage live, and now I got two.
Nice.
Plus a couple gals in the background. So Jeff Young band album is going to be super cool, and whatever we're going to call the other stuff.
Awesome. Some of the other projects are still far enough that...
I got that's most of them. Then I got the other little thing. I met this gal. She's now 16. Her name's Sandy. We got a thing. You can go like us on Facebook called Souls on 11. And we met at an autograph show. And you can see my newest video on my YouTube is the two of us unrehearsed doing Fooling Yourself by Styx.
Okay.
And Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. And Over the Hills and Far Away on acoustic guitar, her on 12-string, me on 6. At this autograph show, we kind of stole the show. Like Eddie Munster was there, the Monkees were there, all these amazing people. And it just so happened her booth was right over there. Her name's Sandy Netborn. And she walked up to me, and I'm sitting at the booth, and She goes, I just want to tell you that you're a big influence and I really love your music. And she looked like she just walked out of the 70s. And she was playing all this music from the 70s, like Make It With You by Bread and all these amazing. I'm like, who is this person? But we started jamming and it's magic. And I think it's magic because she had never played out of her basement. She never, when you go watch the video, the first time they applaud for the Styx is the first time she'd ever heard applause in her life for her. And so her face, she looks at me, she's like, wow. And then when they applaud even louder after the AC/DC, she's like, and then we got a standing ovation by the end. And imagine how this girl felt.
Right.
I'm getting chills talking about, because she's a ventriloquist as well. And she has a YouTube channel doing her ventriloquism. But to have that experience, and it's really cool because I think that's what people are charmed by, because she's so young and new and green and right out of the basement, but has so much raw talent and great pitch, and she can play. She's doing the 12-string Over the Hills guitar part right when Jimmy Page comes in with da 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 da. She comes right in with me, and the audience is like, wow. So she's playing the guitar parts. She was 15 when we did that.
Right.
And then I have obviously more experience. I'm obviously older than her. And I think the mashup of that is something really cool. And we got our first gig we're going to do early in 2024 at the legendary Cutting Room in New York City. Will be our first official live gig for Souls on 11. But you can like us on Facebook and follow our trip and her evolution from, I mean, I can't imagine what this girl's going to be like 5-10 years from now, because she's such a talent, and her charisma, she has a charisma like no one I've ever met. She's just really magical. If you could, there's a saying of what would happiness look like if you could put it in a human being, and it's her. You could just cram it in there. Pure happiness.
Sounds amazing. You ever have, well, not necessarily writer's block, but player's block, where you just get stumped? How do you handle getting past that?
The main player's block comes from just realizing that, you know, you're trying to create music from an innocent place, you know, and then you're putting it into an industry that's totally diabolical and satanic, man. And it's a you know what I'm saying? And that's why the best music never gets heard by most people, you know, unless you really look and investigate. You're going to miss some of the best music that was ever made. You know, if you just buy within the corporate music industry machine. So that's the frustrating thing, that sometimes what makes you want to give up is like, you know, how is anyone ever going to hear this? I'm putting all this care and creativity and money and time, if you're financing it yourself without a label behind it. And then you know, you want people to hear it. You don't want to throw it in the forest, you know?
Absolutely. So what is Six Strings Inc.?
Isn't that cute? That's just, I thought it was funny. Six String. That's just my, it's my band page on Facebook, mm-hmm. Jeff Young Six String Incorporated, because, you know, we have on your personal pages, you can only have 5,000 friends. Somehow I've got around it, and I got 2 pages, so I'm on my second, working up to 10,000, but I got a band page, and I just thought that was a funny Jeff Young Six String Incorporated.
Okay.
But I got that, and then I have High Tone 11 Music, which is my record label that it was Water Songs Music, that I put Equilibrium out, and I'll put this album out. And then once you put it out on your own label, you can license it to another label, or you could do licensing or distribution deals in other territories and then still retain the rights to your master tapes.
Okay, awesome. But there's a way around all that. Because not everybody wants to sell their soul.
No.
And that's beautiful in itself. But the what was it? The new single. Is there a projected date yet on it, or
summer? I want it to be out by summer, so it's because I want to make sure I have the right people around it to help it get out there, just because of what I said.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
the release date's going to depend on getting the team around the song
Okay.
to help it get some radio play. Hopefully we can do a video, because people are very visual, and it's cool to watch. And this is the kind of video that's a real party song, so it'd be cool to see, to do a real happy video and put my friends, and I don't like the word fans, friends and family, in the video. Have a tailgate party, but it's my buddies at that, or a campfire, and we're doing the song around the campfire. Then we're in the club doing it.
Like an old kegger.
Would be beautiful. It's that kind of a tune. Wave Rider, people.
Wave Rider. Stay
Ride
tuned for that.
wave this summer.
And any possible projection on the whole album?
Well, for sure, it's coming out this year. I just take my time with the thing. It's like I kind of feel like the tortoise and the hare.
Right.
Like I don't like burning out and trying to do stuff too fast. I just let it take its own course, and I ride the wave. I feel like the music business is a lot like where you're sitting on the surfboard, and that's when I'm practicing. We're wood shedding, we're recording, we're rehearsing, and then here comes the 30-foot wave, and that's the shows and the concert and the release and the music, and then you just start paddling real fast, and you try to get up and stand up as long as you can.
Absolutely.
So I'm gonna just take the time with it, and sometimes you're waiting for a musician you really want to play on that track. I got to have this person on the track, and you got to wait for them, or you got to have this guy mix it, so you got to wait for the engineer who's going to help you mix it. So I'm just kind of letting it take care of itself, but I'm hoping the whole album for sure by third quarter.
Okay. Awesome. I'm definitely looking forward to it, and I can't wait for you to get it out so we can play it.
Yeah, it's been a long birthing process on this one.
And we're still doing Warren Star?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, going to Warren Star after this. All right,
Heading to
everybody.
Warren Star, and I wanted to do from Thin Lizzy's doing some songs. So Thin Lizzy, one of my favorite bands of all time. So anytime I can hear Thin Lizzy, I'm going to do that. And Kings of Thrash, we're playing December 14th at the Whiskey, 16th at Stages in Santa Ana. We got Far Beyond Hostile, which is LA's mostly female Pantera tribute. It's two sisters that are like the Dime and Vinny on guitar and drums, and they're in their 20s, and they're doing really good doing the Pantera. And they got this amazing female singer, and she sounds like Phil, and she's killer.
Yes, they were at the Blues in September when you were there, and that was an amazing set.
They're killer, right?
Yeah, awesome, totally awesome.
And I might, if you think back to what I said about a Pantera S song that I'm doing, and said I have a great singer to sing on that, and you're going to be blown away by
2 + 2 = 4.
If you put 2 and 2 together, you might be able to figure out who that person is, right? Sarah.
I know who it is.
Sarah, smile.
Well, everybody, Mr. Jeff Young right here in the Yeti Radio Studios. Thank you for joining me, sir. And it's been a pleasure and honor. Thank you very much for...
I didn't sing anymore. I don't want you to have to pay Hall Notes, and I didn't want YouTube to strike you, copyright strike you.
Right? Absolutely.
Hall Notes.
We're going to close out with Slow Burn by Mr. Jeff Young right here on
and
the
Andrea
Yeti
Witt.
Radio.
And James Lomenzo.
It's the Yeti Radio. We were just live with Mr. Jeff Young, live in studio interview, and what an amazing interview it was. Thanks to Jeff for the opportunity joining me here in the studio. They're headed over to Warren Star Clothing grand opening. Their little warehouse over here in Goodyear, Arizona, right there off of Bullard Avenue. So if you're in town, go check them out. I'm headed over there. So come join us. Looks like Miss London Holly's over there from the Centrics as well. So come hang out, have a good time. And don't forget, you can always check out the Yeti Radio live 24/7 on Live 365, Odyssey, Radio.net, MyTuner Radio, Apple TV Radio or Apple Music Radio, online Music Box, Streameter, Alexa, and Sonos. Live shows are on all those, as well as YouTube and Twitch. So thank you for joining me tonight. Everybody have a good night, and we'll catch you on the next show or interview right here on the YetiRadio.com.
The Phoenix music scene. Powered by the YetiRadio.com.